So let's bring John McMullen into the conversation. Follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Plenty of articles up discussing the Eagles' big win over the Cowboys. John, welcome. How are you today, my friend?
Doing well. How are you guys?
We're doing good, man. It's Victory Monday.
Happy Festivus.
Happy Festivus for the rest of us. This is the best day of the holiday season. How do you celebrate Festivus, John?
Well, I got some problems with all you guys, so I'm going to be airing some grievances.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. That's what I said to Jeff before the show. I was like, we need to air some grievances today. But let's start it off. Air some grievances with the Eagles-Cowboys game yesterday. Initial, reaction.
I don't know what to think of this team, to be honest. I expected them to win the game. Joe Namath it with Joe Krause, so I guaranteed the victory. But I look at this stretch in this 3 games, and I think we're in an intra-division bubble, and this division is horrific. It's horrible. And you needed overtime to beat the New York Giants. You needed a late drive to beat the Washington Redskins. You needed Dak Prescott, which I told people all week, he was not healthy, and he was clearly not healthy, and he was not 100%. And that played out in that game yesterday. But you also have to give the credit to the Eagles for getting things done, winning these football games. But I'm not sure what it means, to be honest, because the competition is that bad.
I was hoping you would have some clarity for us today, because I never know what to think of this team. And, that's the distinction I think that at least I'm trying to make today is obviously I think for the most part, the fans are really excited and you get the win against the Cowboys. You're winners of 3 straight against division opponents, especially after the 3 games prior to this winning streak. But I don't know if it's fool's gold. Like, I don't know if it's just because of the opponent. And then yesterday you have a quarterback in Dak that essentially couldn't move his shoulder. Like, I don't know how much of a factor that was, how much of a factor Jason Garrett was. Like, I don't know if this is a good team. Is Miles Sanders for real? Is Greg Ward for real? I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Well, I think Miles Sanders is for real, but he is still a rookie, and I think you're going to have some issues at times, but the talent is there. I think Greg Ward has done a wonderful job with the opportunity that he has been given and has made himself a part of this offense. But no, he's not the type of talent like Miles Sanders is. So everything's context. I mean, this is a very good coaching staff. I know people don't like to hear that, and this is the best job they've done since 2016. This is it. This is better than the Super Bowl season. To get this team where it is with what they are rolling out there each and every week from a personnel standpoint. So I think you can hang your hat on that. But, yeah, I mean, there's this weird dichotomy about this game. Like, the Cowboys are making up this Dak Prescott injury, and he was healthy. And I guess if you want to believe that and it makes you feel better, go ahead. But I'm telling you, the guy was hurt. He played through it. And he was not nearly as effective as he normally would be. And you look at certain plays that Tavon Austin getting behind the defense. Well, typically he's going to hit that play. The inaccuracy, typically he's not the most accurate quarterback in the world, but it's not going to be that bad.
Right.
On the other hand, I've also said, and people scoffed at me for that, this defense is much better in Lincoln Financial Field. So you got to throw all this into one big cauldron and try to figure things out. And all I know is this team is the best team in a bad division. I don't know where that gets you.
Yeah, neither do we. We're hoping a division title and a playoff berth, but I don't.
They're going to win the division, and they're going to get a playoff berth, and then it comes down to who's coming in here. The most likely scenario is Seattle. And they are banged up beyond belief. They don't have a running back. All of a sudden, Rashad Penny gets hurt. Chris Carson gets hurt. They're talking to Marshawn Lynch to bring him back. They lose Dwayne Brown. So, hey, maybe that works out well for the Eagles. and they can even get a home playoff win. We'll see. I think tonight's game means a lot to that. If Minnesota is able to beat Green Bay, they could possibly be the 5 seed. That's probably not as good for the Eagles. I think that's a better football team than Seattle, at least Seattle, a banged-up Seattle. So if you want to look that far ahead, I think you kind of want to root for Seattle to come here again, but just because they're decimated injury-wise.
And I want you to give us an injury update in just a second, but one more question before you give us a quick update, on Zach Ertz. I think that's the big one, and everyone else on that list. But how good of a job did Jim Schwartz really do yesterday with that game plan and the calls that he made? Because you brought up the coaching staff and how, good of a job they've been doing this year. So does Schwartz deserve a ton of credit? I feel like he did change some things up. He did put some, more guys in the box. He did disguise some coverages, some zone coverages. So what did you see? And is this defense for real? Or is this, once again, we're not really sure how to decipher it?
Well, yes and no. I mean, he did load the box, and that was the game plan, and that was expected to be the game plan to stop the run. But he also was he knew, like everybody else knew, the Eagles knew Dak Prescott was hurt. The question is how effective or how non-effective he was going to be. And that gave you an opportunity to even amp up the original game plan even further, and that was stop Ezekiel Elliott first and foremost. So from that standpoint, there's a little luck involved in that the Eagles could do it. And they found out pretty early in the game that the zip wasn't going to be there consistently. It was at times, but and when it was, the accuracy wasn't there. So it's a lot easier to do some things when you know the quarterback is probably not going to be able to hurt you as he typically would be. So you also have to put that into it as well. But, hey, anytime you give up 9 points in this league, it's really good. And that was the top-ranked offense in the NFL. And that's what people will hang their hat on and say, look at what they did. There's still some serious personnel deficiencies, specifically on the back end. And now you've lost Ronald Darby. He's probably not going to play again this season. So you're going to have to roll out Rasul Douglas at right corner. And that was Rasul getting beat by Tavon Austin. If Dak Prescott just makes a simple throw, that's a touchdown. We've seen it time and time again. So I do think there's some personnel deficiencies that are going to make it's tough to say your defense is going to be good each and every week because they don't have that kind of personnel.
And you brought up Darby and his injury. So before Broads jumps in here and gives you some questions and talks about the game, what are some updates or news that you have regarding the injuries?
Well, Zach's got a broken rib, no surprise, and that was probably maybe the worst part of Carson Wentz's game because he kind of led Zach Ertz into that broken rib with a bad throw, and he acknowledged it after the game. So I think it's good news. It's generally when you talk about ribs, it's displaced or non-displaced, and if it's one you can't play, if it's the other you can play, and the fact that he was able to return to the game and finish is a good indication that he's going to be able to fight through this thing. And anybody who knows Zach, he's one of those guys. He came back. He's going to fight through it. Question is, similar to Dak, how effective can he be? Now, the fact that he's out on the field is going to help you anyway, as it did opening up some things with Dallas Goedert. But Dallas might have to handle more of the traffic with Zach ailing that much as far as catching the football. But I do think he's going to try to play through it.
Well, let's look at the defensive side of the ball. We'll stay on that for right now. Josh Sweat, Vinny Curry, they came up big with some sacks, and Fletcher Cox had a strip play as well. So what did you think about the way the defensive line played in this one?
Well, it's always the strength of this team defensively, and it has been all year. I know people focus on sacks, and maybe those numbers aren't as high as people want them to be, but it's not necessarily about getting the sack. It's just about getting the quarterback off the spots, hurrying him up. Sometimes it's better not to get a sack. I always point back to the NFC Championship game and Chris Long. You didn't want Chris Long getting that sack, because what it turned into, hits Case Keenum, ball pops in the air, Patrick Robinson interception, pick six, game over. So it's not just about sacks. And that defensive line is the strength, has been the strength, remains the strength of the Eagles' defense. And generally, as they go, that defense goes. And it's good when you have Derek Barnett back, and that enables you to get a better rotation to keep people fresh late in the game. And you've seen Josh more production in recent weeks. So it's rounding into form. It's getting better, just as you need to get better.
A couple other guys I want to touch on. I thought Malcolm Jenkins had a very strong game. I thought Avonte Maddox made some big plays. And, of course, Sidney Jones, of all people, getting his hands on the ball and turning his head around. So what did you think about those three players?
Well, Malcolm's Malcolm. I mean, he's one of those guys who it's probably to be honest, he's on a descent as far as his career arc at his age. But he's still as smart as they come. And, you know, you see that one pass breakup from Avonte Maddox on Amari Cooper on that big conversion, and it was Malcolm who told him what the play was and alerted him to be in the right spot. That's the kind of player you're talking about with Malcolm Jenkins, and he kind of knows what's going on. He knows every position. Almost like a classic middle linebacker, but in the secondary, who can line people up and decipher what's going on. So even though he has probably lost a half step or from a physical standpoint, he's still a really, really effective player. And Sidney Jones, that's 2 times in 3 weeks. He barely plays, but these plays are giving him confidence. And I look at Rasul Douglas, and I said it today on Twitter. I'm going to say it on the show. I'd rather have Sidney Jones out there. He's just a better player from a physical standpoint. And I think his entire struggle was related to confidence. And I think now that he's made those 2 plays over the past 3 weeks, I think he's gaining some confidence. You can tell it by talking with him. He's feeling better about himself. I give him another chance before I put Rasul Douglas on the field.
Before we hop over to the offensive side, the last thing I want to talk about the defense is about Ezekiel Elliott. And deep into the first half, he had -1 yards on 4 carries. Is this something we credit Jim Schwartz for doing, or do we tie into effect that Jason Garrett did not run him the right way or run him enough throughout the first half? What do you see on the Ezekiel Elliott performance?
Well, kind of like I said, I mean, that was the Eagles' game plan, but it was also amped up when they figured out very early that Dak Prescott wasn't going to be able to get the ball outside consistently. So that enabled you to ramp up the run support and even focus on Zeke that much more. So anytime it's your game plan, you know, the Cowboys played Minnesota on a night game, if you guys saw that. And that was the Vikings sort of laid out the game plan, but that's when Dak was healthy. And the Vikings sold out to stop Ezekiel Elliott. And they did. They completely shut him down. But Dak, as I said, was still healthy, and he was gassing him outside the numbers. Well, he couldn't do that yesterday. So the Eagles kind of took that and completely sold out to stop Ezekiel Elliott and didn't have to worry about the quarterback. And that's why I said to Ryan, I said, I don't know how much he can take from this game, because that's how deficient Dak was from his typical game. He shouldn't have been out there. And if the Cowboys had a Josh McCown type, Josh McCown probably would have been out there, but they have Cooper Rush, so he had to play. and that helped the Eagles. Nothing wrong with it, but you also have to be realistic about it.
Yeah, definitely. I see exactly what you're saying. And before I throw it over to Ryan, we need to touch on this. We are 18 minutes into this conversation, and the name Carson Wentz.
Who?
Some guy. Yeah, listen, he had a strong performance, and people were arguing that this is the biggest game of his career, the closest thing to a playoff game. 31 of 40, 319 yards and a touchdown, made some impressive throws to Dallas Goedert. Your thoughts on Carson Wentz?
Well, I said it on the Countdown to Kickoff show. It was his biggest game to this point, and now next week is his biggest game. And after next week, if they win, the next week is his biggest game. And that's what you want as a quarterback. You want to get in these spots where you're playing meaningful football in December, and you want to turn that into the postseason, and those are all big games. So it's only as meaningful as it is in that second, and he's playing very well. He's carrying this team, and he's making people look. I've been killed, and I told people about Greg Ward, at least on this station, and now people are acting like I got the name T.Y. Hilton, I got the name Julian Edelman. No, he's not that.
He's much better.
He's not that. Exactly. And I'm trying to pump the brakes on people. Carson is making these players better. And you have to give, as I said, you have to give Greg credit for making the plays that are there. But he is not a star receiver in this league. I mean, if you look at some of the star receivers, anybody see Michael Thomas play this weekend? That's a star receiver in this league. And you'll see a bunch tonight with Devontae Adams and Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen is back. Those are star receivers. Carson Wentz is throwing to Greg Ward and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Rob Davis, and the tight ends are good, but Zach Ertz, he's been phenomenal over this 3-game winning streak. But again, it's intra-division. It's the New York Giants, it's the Washington Redskins, it's the Dallas Cowboys. And this is the second worst division since the NFL realigned to the current format. That's how bad it is.
I'm surprised it's not the worst.
Well, it is. It was the worst 3 weeks ago until they started playing each other. Right. So the Eagles keep winning. Somebody had to win these games because the division is playing each other. So mathematically, they moved ahead. I think it's the 2008 NFC West is the worst division. So mathematics kind of made them a little bit better. I don't know if it is better from a real standpoint, but until they play an opponent, and it's not going to happen to the playoffs, that is legit, I don't know what to think of this team. But they're gaining confidence. They're taking advantage of the soft part of their schedule, and you have to give them credit for that. And like I said, Doug Peterson, Jim Schwartz, and yes, even Mike Rowe, they are doing a hell of a coaching job to ramp these guys up and get these guys performing at this level.
John, what's changed? And, Hunter, myself, and Moshe talked about this earlier in the show, and still trying to figure it out. I want your assessment on it. Like, is it Doug simplifying the game plan? We know how much that gets brought up, especially with how it relates to Nick Foles when he's had to step in previous seasons. But is it that? Is it Greg Ward and Boston Scott and Miles Sanders, those guys just simply making plays? Has Wentz elevated his game over the past 3 games? Like, what has changed? Or is it just simply the competition?
Well, I think it's all of the above.
Yeah.
He has simplified. He's admitted that to us. He has simplified the game plan because there's so many young players involved, and you don't want to put too much on their plate. So that's part of it. Carson has elevated his game. I made the comparison. If you go way back into early in Eli Manning's career, the New York Giants moved on from Jeremy Shockey and Tiki Barber, who were their 2 best skill position players and were great players. And they did it because they had big personalities and they didn't like the effect they were having on the quarterback. Now, the Eagles didn't make that kind of decision overtly, but I think you have some of that going on, to be honest. And Carson, this is his team. He feels more comfortable. The Greg Wards of the world aren't going to make any waves. They're not going to talk to Josina Anderson. Not that a receiver did talk to her, but wink, wink. So I think that's part of it. And I think the competition is part of it. It's bad competition. But that's what you do in this league. If you're a good team, look at every good team. They generally take care of business against the teams they should beat. And then against the good teams, you win some, you lose some. And that's how you get a really good record in this league. So if you go back to that Dolphins game, that was the low point. There's losing to a team you certainly shouldn't lose to. And they've had this soft part of their schedule, and they've beaten the Giants, even though – and I've told you guys in the past, that game against the Giants, that game against the Redskins, I said it time and time again. The Eagles were going to get it to Week 16 with a chance to be in control of this division. But I didn't think it would be that difficult against the Giants and the Redskins. So it depends how you kind of look through the prism. Are you impressed by that? Are you less than impressed by that? But the bottom line is they won the football games.
And that's the biggest takeaway. It's John McMullen, Everyday Football at 4 right here on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at JF McMullen, and be sure to go to the 97.3 ESPN.com website. He has a bunch of content up there. Staying Alive, one of the articles, couple other good pieces by John McMullen. If you missed this convo or any convo with John, go to our YouTube page, 973 ESPN. John, you're the man. You'll be on Countdown to Kickoff show tonight?
Rumor has it, if I
Allegedly?
make it,
all right.
we're all day to day.
You're day to day. You're trending in the right direction.
That's it.
Hour to hour.
All right, John. Thanks, man.
All right, thanks, guys.